All right, welcome back to the Collective Intelligence Block Party number 18. This is our 18th consecutive 24-hour block party without missing a Friday, Saturday. And this is the beginning of the the first of two 2-hour food healers segments. And welcome. How do you say your name again? I know your husband is Srikar.
Sasha.
Anyway, welcome everyone.
Welcome,
All right,
Sasha.
and Silas, you want to lead us here on the food healers? Of course, I'm here to help in any way I can, but please take it away, Silas.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Yes, this week we have identified another 400 families in the Tempe area that need help. So they're all getting their food through an elementary school that is doing all the food collection so that they can distribute it to the families. And these are all mostly Native American families. So clearly the need is there, it is just growing. The Guardian newspaper has projected that the number of people who are food insecure in the US is going to double by the end of 2020. And worldwide, it's also going to double by end of 2020. So we are talking about roughly 2 billion people who are going to be food insecure. But the flip side of that is that there will be 6 billion people who are food secure. Okay, so which means that the 6 billion people who are food secure should be helping the 2 billion people who are food insecure. So I really think that the way we create a new system as this old system is crumbling in front of our eyes is to build it on the availability of healthy, nutritious food for everyone. And if we can all get together and do that, I think we will come together as a species to figure out how are we going to clean up the planet, So it's going to be a different way of organizing ourselves, but centered around the availability of good, nutritious food as the foundation of the new system. So that's what the K-Mama app is also trying to do. It's basically trying to connect people who are food secure with people who are food insecure, and using places of worship as the trusted source through which food is being distributed. So we were calculating, the temple is estimating that for $4 they can create a nutritious meal per person. I mean, the temple cook is cooking, and hopefully, the volunteers who are going to be doing the distribution work, the packing work, and things like that. So it's really creating a new food system, literally around temples and places of worship. So, yeah, the app, they are saying that I will get the executable by this weekend. I'm looking forward to that. So, because on Monday I have to go and give a talk to the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. Thanks to Jackie for arranging that. And so the Interfaith Vegan Coalition is going to hear about K-Mama, and hopefully they will then connect us with lots of other temples that are interested in doing the same thing. Temples and churches, synagogues. So I actually got a contribution from Rabbi Shmuley Yanklowitz for the Animal Agriculture is Immoral anthology, in which he speaks about exactly this, about getting synagogues to help address the food insecurity that's happening in the community. So I think the 400 Native American families that are food insecure, primarily I think they were either they had jobs before or whatever, and then their children used to get food at the elementary school. And so that's how we are connected to them. And so I'm basically collecting money to buy just rice and beans. And so we're going to be doing the Costco shopping on Sunday. So if anyone wants to contribute, please contribute, because this is going to be a weekly thing. we're going to be buying rice and beans weekly and delivering it to them. So my wife and I we are promising 100 pounds of rice and 100 pounds of beans per week. So if anyone can augment that, because there are 400 families, so clearly they will need more than 100 pounds of rice and beans each. So we are fundraising for that too.
I'm in for 100, Silas.
Awesome, thank you, Jamin.
So now you're up to 200, and just let me know if I can PayPal or how I can get you the money.
Yeah, I just put it on the Climate Healers website. There is a donate button, and you can just donate. I'll tell you how much it will cost. I think it's around $120 or so per week.
Perfect. That is so cool, Silas. And it makes it so simple. It's just a simple round number, rice and beans. It's so obvious, and I mean, I've been dreaming of this moment literally my whole life. When humanity as a whole basically says, you know what? It's time. Even if we start with rice and beans, let's start with rice and beans, because the priority is to feed everyone rice and beans before we then start, improving the diet for everyone, because everyone's got to eat. That's the priority. And right now, not everyone's eating. That's just the reality.
Right.
And it just has to end.
Yeah, for the temple, we were just calculating for rice and sambar, which is lentils and vegetables, in the soup, and basically you mix it with rice. And so that will be the main meal that we are cooking. But we'll see. We are trying to get other temples interested as well. So hopefully there'll be more people who will join this program. Now, Seva is beginning to see how critical this app is, and how critical this program is, the Food Healers program. So they're putting more weight behind it. So they have a whole advisory group that has formed a WhatsApp. There's a WhatsApp group with the advisors, and so we are talking about it. Okay, they are trying to arrange a meeting with the national committee, where I can present about K-Mama and Food Healers. So it'll go national, because the Seva has now formed a very strong partnership with the Native American community. And so this is why the Native American community is coming to them and saying, we have these people here who need to be fed too. The Navajo Nation needs to be fed, so they're collecting for them. So for them, for the Navajo Nation, it's more than food. It's also personal protection equipment for people who are going home to home and delivering things. So there are masks that need to be provided. So there are over 1,000 masks that they are hand sewing and delivering to people. So all that's happening, and so that connection with the Native American community is growing stronger. It's not just in Arizona, but it's in South Dakota, in Oklahoma. So there are places where they are doing this distribution of PPEs and food. So it's become a national effort for Seva. So now it is, because Native Americans are not just in these reservations, but they're also among us. And it's not just Native Americans now. There are other people among us who are food insecure. So it's just spreading from there, So once we see, I think that's what is different about this particular crisis, is that people are beginning to take responsibility and not waiting for government and established institutions to solve the problem. People are beginning to take responsibility and say, how can we get together and address this? At least, personally, I feel that. I feel like it's my responsibility to step in and help out in any way I can.
So inspiring, Silas. So cool. Goodness. I see Emery's got his hand up. Did you want me to manage the flow of Q?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please.
Alrighty. Well, Jamin's next in the queue, followed by Emery, followed by Kelly, if I've got it right. So I just wanted to comment, like, what's so beautiful about the religious, focal point. I just want to give the example of Mecca, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there are many billionaire Muslims throughout the world and many very poor Muslims, but when they go to Mecca, they're all wrapped in the same basically white sheet. And, you look around and you can't tell the rich from the poor from anyone else. They're all Muslim, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what brings them together. And I'm not Muslim myself, but I have a lot of friends who are Muslim, and I've read the Quran and really kind of tried as best I can to get into their world and understand it. And that's one of the really beautiful things about it, is just this unity. I mean, I was raised Catholic, not practicing now, but we would always give each other the peace shake and everything in church. Muslims take it to a whole new level. They freaking hug, hey, give me a hug, brother. And so with that spirit of unity, right, no religion is going to say, no, we don't want to feed the poor in our faith. And so, well, what about the poor in other faiths, right? And then, of course, the Hare Krishnas have taken it to a whole new level. But here we're basically making it systematic across all religions, and it's so inspiring. So thank you so much, Silas. My goodness, you just never cease to amaze me of how you take on more and more. So rock on, and we're all here behind you. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we got Emery next in the queue, followed by Kelly. Go for it, Emery.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. Thanks, Ash. I have a question for you. I'm curious. I'm curious about the K Mama. Is that an acronym that has like a deeper meaning? Like, is there a way of elaborating on the use of K Mama? And do you envision, or can you envision a moment in the future where you could incorporate the Papa also, like something to do with Papa? I mean, we have the Mama, and now can we introduce the Papa angle to it? Like to hear what you think about that.
Thank you for asking that question. It's K Mama is actually my granddaughter's nickname. So her name is Kimaya, but her friends call her K Mama because she mothers them. So literally, that's where the name comes from. And so I asked her, when we were working on this app, hey, I think K Mama would be a great name for this app. Is it okay if I use your name? She said, what are you going to do with it? And so then I explained to her what we were trying to do. And she said, okay, for that, it's okay to use my name. So that's how it started. That's the origin of the name, And it's also, it sounds like, because the symbol for K Mama is just a K with a ladle at the end. So it's a soup ladle at the end of the K. So it looks like someone is walking around feeding people. That's the idea of the K Mama app.
I see. Well,
yeah.
you could be the Papa.
I am the grandpapa. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Emery. All right, Kelly, go for it.
I like that it's K Mama as well. Sorry, this isn't my question, just because moms are the original feeders of their children through their growth in their bodies and then afterwards. So I think it's really poignant, on top of the fact that it's just Kamaya's nickname, which is obviously cute in itself. We can also position it that way too. Sailesh, I don't know if you saw the tag that I added you to, that I tagged you on Instagram last night from an article from A Well-Fed World, but it's talking about Sikhs across the U.S. that are feeding the Black Lives Matter protesters and those impacted by COVID. And what they're doing is exactly what we're talking about, like utilizing their kitchens and their community donations, right?
Mhm.
So, so I think this gives, not that we needed the validity, we already know we're doing the right thing, but this just adds to, to the realization that like this is the right thing to do, right?
Right.
So I just wanted to mention that. Salesh, if we start, or I shouldn't say when we start doing it in Toronto, and we start like, when I start reaching out to places, if people want to donate, should we be sending them to Climate Healers? Like, do you have any sort of messaging or anything that I can use if I do outreach, and then how any sort of donations should be processed to help with it? Or
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So what we are doing in the app is that we are separating out. So this is what reason why it's a little delayed, because I've told them to make sure that every temple or church can have their own Stripe account on the app, so that donations go directly to them. It doesn't have to come through Climate Healers. And so every church or temple that joins the program can then advertise what their meal cost is. So they will say, for someone who wants to buy a meal, it'll cost, say, $8. So like in the example I quoted you, we calculated that it cost us about $4 per meal for the cook to do that in the temple. So we are going to advertise that the meal costs $8, not $4. Okay. So then when people buy a meal, automatically they are giving one extra meal, right, to someone who doesn't, who cannot afford to pay. So it's a suggested donation of $8 for the meal. It's not that you have to get that. You can just say, I want a meal, and people will just send it to you. But if you then donate more, of course you're feeding more people. So we will even have programs like, the temple can cook for 100 people. Let's say they can cook for 100 meals per day. So then if you donate $400 to the temple, then the temple will say, today's meal is provided by Kelly. Okay. So they will just say, we're all done for the donation. We don't need anything, but today's meal is provided by Kelly. So this is very typical of temples. They do that normally. Like if you go to a temple and you eat the food, they will say today's meal was provided by this family. They'll have a board like that. So normally that's how temples also operate. Someone will donate for the whole day, something like that. So we want to just streamline things, and then when you go and market it to the local churches and the temples, you tell them that they can have their own Stripe account. So they can put their bank details there, and then they'll get their donations directly for the program, right? So we want to just try it out in Phoenix first, and probably Seattle. If John Raymer wants to do it in Seattle, we'll do it there. And Navy wants to do it in New York. So there are like 3 places. Maybe if you want to join Toronto, if you have places that you can do right away, that we can test it out, then we could do it in multiple places and try it out, and make sure that everything is ironed out before we launch it to the whole world.
No, I know that the need in Toronto is great. I help my friend. They do Compassion on the Street. They support vegan businesses. So vegan businesses actually do get paid a little bit for their time, right? They're trying to keep vegan businesses in business during this time. And so they collect donations, and they say, for $15, you feed one person. And then, how much the business gets depends on how much they put towards the food. I did 60 meals over the weekend and they gave them out at a park that's like just in downtown Toronto, and so it's heavily like populated with homeless people right now. They give it out to homeless people, and they didn't even get to the park, and like where the concentrated numbers of them were. They already gave out almost like a quarter or half of the ones they had to just people on the street. Like there is such a need in Toronto for this. And people who were like vegetarian and vegan living, you know, and saying like, we appreciate this so much because being homeless, you can't necessarily live your values, right? You know, so to have someone come up and go, would you like a vegan meal? Like, you know, they were very, very grateful, right? But just like in the conversations they were having, like, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. They had signs that say, was it Ford? Ford is our premier in Ontario. Like signs saying like, help us, Ford. Ford's not, right? You know, like it's so I know that Toronto, like absolutely Toronto is, and Toronto will step up. I know it, right? So.
And Toronto is a rich city, so I mean, if Toronto is feeling, and well, Silas said the numbers. I mean, the number of food insecure is doubling in 1 year. We've never seen that ever in the history of humanity. I mean, other than, I don't know, an ice age or something like, you know, but this is, I mean, but at this magnitude, there's now billions of us. When we had an ice age, there were tens of millions of us or something. So this is just at a whole new level.
Oh, I'm seeing it. I'm following other like nonprofit organizations that are doing it now. They're probably not doing vegan meals, right? But just to, like you said, the demand, the need is huge. I mean, it's huge everywhere. But like you said, Toronto's a rich city, right? There's, you know, so I think, you know, this is absolutely should be one of the ground zeros to test, you know,
Right. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I think we'll have a great success here.
And you know, this feature that I really love is that you can make the donations locally to whatever specific town or even specific religious institution, right? And so in a way, I don't know if you guys have AAA up in Canada, but I'm sure you know what it is, you know, the automobile insurance.
For CAA.
CAA, okay, great. So, you know, this sort of is going to be like the AAA of food, right? Wherever you are, if you need food, we'll be there, right? Guaranteed. And one of the great things about, you know, doing it in rich cities like Toronto, you know, because I could easily say, oh, come on, they're a rich city, I'm not going to donate to Toronto. But here's the thing, by doing it in Toronto, you give rich Canadians an opportunity to say, well, of course, we're going to donate here. Okay, we fed everyone in Toronto. They're still starving in location X, Y, or Z, but you've already got their heart pumping, right? Their compassionate heart pumping by donating to their own city. Well, of course, I'm going to help my brothers and sisters here in Toronto. But you know, that's just the on-ramp to helping our brothers and sisters everywhere. Going on mute. Thank you.
I'm trying to think of what our particular area in Toronto is interesting because it's called the Crossroads. It's the edge of Toronto and Scarborough, which is the larger body of the eastern end. And where part of this junction is that the beaches to the south is a really rich area of Toronto, established wealth. And to the north of us is a project. It's, you know, we're really in a crossroads of, also a multicultural crossroads. There's Greektown on the other end of the Danforth, and as it gets further away from the center of the city, it becomes increasingly Muslim. So we're in a very, there's, all the churches here have been converted to mosques, and there's mosques on the Danforth, on Danforth Avenue. So it's probably can become a, you know, a crossroads in more ways than one. That there's a lot of money nearby, and there's also a lot of, and I think a lot of the you were talking about the Muslims, and there's rich and poor. I think that a lot of the more affluent Muslims live in this area. So there's community centers that are combined into churches as well.
Right.
So we're also looking for opportunities where they may not have people that are their full-time staff, but Kelly knows how to cook and it's somewhere nearby, and we've just inherited a big van. So we're a little bit more adept at catering now.
And I know that I donated to AfroCan. They're a Rastafarian organization, and they give out vegan food. They're vegan, So I know that, immediately I know that we have someone that we would love to donate more to. I know they've got the space, because we've talked to them. We had a Black Vegan Festival last year that we went to. This year's is canceled because of COVID, but and we met the people, so we know them, we can connect with them. So like, I know we've got at least a few places right off the bat that,
Right.
that would be eager, I'm sure.
Toronto also has a vegetarian food bank
Hmm.
that's not active constantly, but they have a routine that they go through, and empowering them would probably create lots of different opportunities.
Yeah, because right now they only operate once a month. I guess they only get the food capacity to be able to give out once a month. So obviously would love to get that going more frequently.
That I put my name in the queue. The question I wanted to ask was, how prominent is veganism in the project in K-Mama? And I'm assuming it's kind of less advertised, but if it's not prominent, how do you enforce it in the churches that you engage in? What's
Right,
to
yeah.
prevent anybody from the church saying, "Oh, I work at a company. I could donate you 1,000 pounds of butter
Right.
or
Right.
ghee or whatever."
So what we are doing is we are connecting with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and the Universal Meals Program, and we are saying, please, that is the kind of meal that we need to be serving our people so that they don't get chronic diseases that make them more susceptible to COVID-19. So we're sort of educating at the same time. And so this is why for each city, I'm having one admin who's responsible for making sure that those conditions are met. So the admin, so for Toronto, it could be you. Every city will have an admin that enrolls temples and churches and gives them accounts, okay, on the K-Mama app. And so it's up to the admin to make sure that the temples are serving only universal meals or something like universal meals. It has to be whole food plant-based at the minimum, okay? But universal meals go beyond whole food plant-based. They are whole food plant-based and also don't have allergens like nuts and common allergens so that it can be served to anyone. That's the idea, right? So it doesn't have common allergens. It doesn't have root vegetables and things that Jains don't eat, So we looked at all of the restrictions that people have around the world. We've taken them all out and said, okay, these are the foods that everybody can eat. That's the idea behind the Universal Meals Program.
I thought they had root vegetables, because I was wondering about that, because we know a vegan food factory, and they have an outlet in Scarborough, and they practice that Buddhism that excludes the fetid vegetables, I think it's called. They don't have garlic and onions, but I didn't see that as a restriction in the PCRM's universal meal.
You didn't? Okay, I'll check that because I know Baba Jain is on the committee. I'll check whether they have.
Might expand upon what they've already established and say we should eliminate these things as well. I was kind of think of that as a promoting that universal meal idea as a genre, to have a labeling system that shows the degree that this one's 100% compatible. This one is, includes certain things that could
Right.
be considered allergens. Because allergens, there's people that are allergic to anything that comes from a tree, right? There's allergies have no bounds.
Is this something that we're enforcing right off the bat, or is this where we're aiming to be? Like when we do outreach, is this something that's part of the messaging? Like on top of it being vegan, it needs to exclude this?
It needs to be a universal meal, yeah. So it should be a whole food plant-based. Because basically what we are trying to do is to create a new food system in which whole food plant-based healthy meals are easily available to everybody. right? So when you create a food system like that, you're literally changing the culture of the world, you know. So it's a very ambitious program, but but then you're getting the religious community helping you to do that, because they also are suffering in the current COVID-19 crisis. They don't get donations because there are no church services, and unless people go to services, they don't donate, you know. So it's part of how do you get the religious community now again involved in serving the community and getting a flow of revenue, you know, of donations into them from people who have jobs still, right? So we're taking a crumbling old system and taking whatever resources can be tapped from the old system and trying to build a new one, in which and then of course then we'll be working on the Aquarius app. You know, that's the next app that we have to work on, is the Aquarius app. And then we will tell people, hey, you know, once you have 100 Karuna points or 101 Karuna points in the K-Mama app, you can join the Aquarius app. So you become like a qualified to join the Aquarius app, right? So this way, so people are getting used to this new way of thinking, the altruistic way of thinking, before they join the Aquarius app. So that's the idea.
And working with churches is genius, because each church has a mandate to know their community, their congregation, and their neighbors. So I mean, it's there implicitly in Christian faiths that you love your neighbor. Who is your neighbor? This is an app that finds churches have the ability to find out who are the people who are suffering in their congregation. So there's automatically a line to certain people, and it gets that community active, whereas right now they're not meeting, and they're kind of drifted into their isolation. So breaking that isolation, at least with love instead of just distance.
Right.
All righty. Well, Jamin is next in the queue. I don't mind saying. I really love what you just said there, Ray. And because what we're seeing here, what I'm seeing with this is love at multiple levels. So there's the love at the level of the local mosque that says, you know what, we're getting to know our community, we're doing our outreach. If you're Muslim, great. If you're not Muslim, great. We're not here to convert you, we're here to feed you, that kind of thing. And then as every religion, as every church and synagogue and mosque and temple gets into the game, right, I see a new kind of love emerging, because, you can imagine there's an intersection and 3 different bicycles toting, large quantities of food to deliver. A Jew, a Muslim, and a Christian meet at the intersection. They're all out delivering food, and they're all looking at each other saying, hey, you guys are cool. Hey, we're all cool. If we're all doing the same thing, it's kind of like, you start to melt away those religious divides that say we have the answers and those guys over there, they're evil, right? It's kind of like if we're all fundamentally doing the same thing. And in fact, something just occurred to me, just a flash, that, we've got all these mega churches in the United States. I imagine Canada as well, but here, certainly the United States is the land of the mega church. We could have essentially an online, I'm not going to call it a church or a religion, but something spiritual. And imagine instead of, an older person with a gray beard giving the introduction, it's K-Mama herself. Whoa, what's going on here? What is this, like the new Messiah, right? Did the Catholics have some new apparition of the Virgin Mary, and or is this like, instead of the Dalai Lama being a baby boy, now it's a baby girl? What's going on, right? So I think it could shock the heck out of people that K-Mama is leading the charge to end hunger, and she gets on, and just in the simplest terms, hey, everybody, we've got neighbors who are hungry, and that's simply not okay. Are you with me? And it's like, yeah. Right, anyway, just wanted to say that. Go on mute.
It's true. The people knowing that it's a child that's driving this, I think will really just wake a lot of people up.
I've said in a few other contexts that this is kind of the sign of the times of how we survive. Is we've had this accumulation of knowledge that's passed from parents to children, from parents to children, parents to children. Tell us how the world works, and now we have to hit that wall and turn back and say, let that millennial generation, the younger generations, tell us how the future is going to go. Because I mean, learning how things have gone in the past is absolutely no value anymore. We've hit this exponential curve of everything that makes us, wonder which rules still apply. So we need to look back. And the idea of a young girl saying, "I'm your mama now. Listen to your mama." It has that kind of comedic effect and that kind of charming value. But really, at the end of the day, we kind of understand that the environmentalists are starting to talk that language of we have to save this future for our children. So
I mean, we saw it with Greta, right?
Right.
So that, it just, people are going, kids know.
And I'm really glad you brought up Greta, because Greta is the Greta of climate change. K-Mama can be the Greta of food healing and feeding everyone. And not coincidentally, those are the two foundational elements, because here's the thing, we were talking about this just a little bit ago, Emery and James and I. Imagine a pyramid, right? Imagine there's the base of the pyramid and the next level above that. Imagine that the second level is all about food, right? It's still not the foundation. The foundation is we need to have a planet that supports life. And that's where climate change, planetary overheating, and the solution of SRM, right, comes in. So you got SRM at the base, feed everyone above that. And now with that two-layer foundation, you now have a context for all of the social and ecological transformations and healing that needs to happen. Because if people aren't fed, right, there's just going to be more and more and more protests and violence and people trying to feed their families and people angry because the elite aren't giving them a chance to eat, right? So those are the two foundational elements. Greta's got, layer number one. It's time for K-Mama to do layer number two. And then we've got that composite two-layer. Anyway, you get the picture of what I'm trying to say. Go on unmute. Thank you.
Yeah, we are also, with our white papers, or I'm calling them position papers these days, because someone pointed out to me that white is not good. I mean, we keep calling everything good as white and everything bad as black, right? So I said, all right, I'm going to call it position papers now instead of white paper. So in our animal agriculture position paper, we are pointing out that food is at the root of that as well. It's not just a fossil fuel issue. So yes, we have to look at the totality of climate change, the totality of what's happening to the biodiversity. And there are things we need to do with SRM, we need to do with making sure that things don't get to a point where we are in a hothouse earth and we cannot grow food, right? So it's not just, we have to keep our biodiversity preserved, we have to keep the temperature down so that it is possible to still grow food. And then we have to grow food, so we have a lot of effort that needs to be. This is why, when the yogis asked Guy McPherson, if you had all the power in the world, what would you be doing right now? What would you like to do right now? And he said, feed people. Okay, he said, feed people and then educate them. So those are the two things he said we need to be doing, right? So, I mean, even though he comes from this position of saying, we are all going to hell in a handbasket. There's nothing you can do. It's already done. I mean, all the tipping points have already happened. That's the way he frames it. And I'm saying, no. I mean, the tipping points are not instantaneous events. These are things that happen, and you can roll the rocks back, right? We can try to roll the rocks back, so and prevent them from rolling downhill anymore, right? So that's where our efforts should be going into, which is bringing back the forest as quickly as possible. I mean, start sequestering the carbon. So we are reframing climate change from a mainly fossil fuel issue to a food issue, right? That's what the animal agriculture position paper did, right? And then in the vegan world position paper, we are saying that, this is the time that we have to look at creating a vegan world within the next 6 years, right? This is, I mean, that promise is sacrosanct, okay? Has to be met. Any pinky promise to a child is a promise that has to be met. So, and I mean, I don't see that as a promise that I made to her. I see it as a promise that my generation made to her generation, that our generation, right, we together are going to make this happen. It's unacceptable to leave a world that's destroyed and continuing to be destroyed. Okay, so we have to leave a world that is thriving, that is back to being thriving, that is on the upswing at the least before I die, So. No! Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Sorry.
Kamaya! Kamaya, how you doing?
Yeah, she just woke up.
All right. Can she hear, or you got earbuds? Okay.
Yeah, I have earbuds. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say something reassuring to her.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hey, Kamaya. That's I just want to respond to what you said, if I may. We love your grandfather so much that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that he lives super long. 150 years old, 200 years old. Right? Why not? Because, we have great technology, and what you both are doing together is creating a context for peace and health for the whole planet so that we can all live long into the future. So I just wanted to let you know, we're all on your side, Kamaya, and we all love your grandpa Silas.
I just don't say
that. Yeah, that's a good point. She has a really good point.
Sorry.
Anyway, I'm next in the. I was next in the queue. I just wanted to mention a couple other things, but first I wanted to address Kamaya, because that really reached out to me. So it's interesting to see. I was at the meeting with Guy McPherson also on Wednesday. I was actually translating the English to Spanish and vice versa, and he. I was there. So when he said, food and education, well, what a difference a week makes. Because just the week prior, I had sent a video that I made just for Guy and his partner, Pauline, and Dr. Ye Tao, and they all watched it. And in that, I made the point that we start with feeding everyone, right? And then we work from there. I'm going to read his response. This is a week prior, last week, his response. Thank you, Jamin. I appreciate your thoughtful video and attendant comments. As ecologists have been pointing out for more than 5 decades, feeding people leads to more people. That's how we arrived at 7.8 billion people on Earth. Sorry, but continuing to feed people is adding to the future disaster for humans and every other species on Earth. Guy McPherson in email last week. Now look at this week. What a difference a week makes. Because when I saw that, the thing is, Pauline had responded to her on her signed off her last meeple saying, Black lives fucking matter. And I said, well, and so I responded to all that. And I said, well, look, the Black people in Africa who are starving to death, do their lives not matter? Do those Black people not matter? Is it only African-American Blacks who matter? Right. And she exploded in her response. It was just an explosion because, they'd been called out. Well, what a difference a week makes. Because the thing is, the logic here is irrefutable. And part of the logic I used with them is that when you let people starve to death, fine, the starving can't reproduce because they don't have the calories. But above starvation, you have subsistence level, and that's the engine of overpopulation. But they're overpopulating because they're ground down to the bottom. Yes, they can eat, but they can't do much more. They don't own, they don't this, they don't that. So they eat and they reproduce in the hopes that one of their kids will make it or a couple of their kids will make it, and then they can have a nice retirement. I've been doing volunteer, well, I did volunteer work in Mexico as a teenager and into my 20s. And going back to 1984, I'll never forget, in those rural villages in Guanajuato, central Mexico, the poorer the family, the more kids they had.
Right.
Families with 12, 14 kids, just endless. And I could just, this was 1984, you know, and I could see where this was going, and where it was going is where we are right now in 2020. But that's what you get when you marginalize people, right? They want to live, they want to thrive. And if having kids is the only way they can do that, well, damn it, they will have kids, and lots of them. So it's actually, but it's because there's no floor that people have to overproduce. They feel that. If we had a floor, look at Scandinavia, they've got a floor, no one's fallen through it. So it's like, you know, I'm doing just fine, and I don't need to have kids. And so they don't, right?
Right.
Greta gets all the attention because she's practically the only little girl left in Sweden. Anyway, so anyway, but this is an ongoing discussion now. But I'm glad you brought, again, I'm glad you brought up Greta, Ray, because think about it. Take the Guy McPherson from last week, and I'm going to do a little play acting here, but I think you'll get where I'm going with this. Here's Greta. We must reduce the carbon in the atmosphere, otherwise we will have overheating, and we will not be able to drive our Volvos and go to the beaches in Sweden in the summer. Okay, K-Mom is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We all need to eat. You know, Greta, that's all cool in the gang, but we need to eat, right? And Kamaya is part black. So you have, you know, the white and the, you know, and Greta, I love Greta, don't get me wrong, but part of what makes her so loving and endearing is the Asperger's, right? And in a way, that's sort of like a reflection of this separation, right? We've gotten so screwed up in the head psychically as a species that we've got all this separation from each other, from nature, and we don't want to talk and all this. And Greta's just an amazing example of overcoming that. But Kemaya, Kemama, it's just much more about love and community. It's away from the intellectual. They must reduce the carbon to, we got to feed everybody. And the two of them together, wow, what a combination. So Kemaya could make an invitation to Greta, right? Now, Greta's several years older than Kamaya. So it's almost like, you know, Greta reloaded, Greta 2.0. You know, anyway, as a creative, I get a little creative, but I hope I'm not offensive to anyone. But anyway, just putting it out there. Thank you.
No, I mean, when I went to India in 2007, 2008, you know, I just to start studying all these environmental problems, I went to this village in Rajasthan, India, which is at the edge of the Thar Desert. So it's a place where I could study biodiversity loss, ecosystems collapse, and climate change all in one spot. And I found that the average household had about 6 children in that village. And I started talking to the women, you know, why do you have so many kids? And they basically said, we don't know how many will survive. We don't know how many will survive. And we want to have at least one child, you know, alive when we get old. So it's that insecurity that there is no floor in society that makes them want to reproduce more. Clearly, that's the reason. Whereas if you go to the cities of India where people are relatively well off, they're having like on average 1.8 kids. So they're below, you know, sustainability. So their population is declining, you know, if you just let them be. But people are migrating from the villages into the cities. So that's how the city populations are growing. So you can see that that's where, you know, the population growth is happening. And so this is why the biologists are incorrect in just saying it's just, if you give them more food, there'll be more people. No, that's not the way it works. That's not how society works, especially among human beings. So we are, in that sense, a different kind of species, right? So we do have that ability to not follow the rules that other species follow. So there, the ecologists are used to the predator-prey model, where predators will keep reproducing as long as there is enough prey. Okay? And the same happens to the prey. The prey will keep reproducing as long as there is food. See? So the predator-prey model then figures out the balance that happens between the two of them. So they're used to that, and they think of us as part of the same predator-prey model. And if you put that equation in, I mean, and I've seen papers written by professors equating human beings to predators. Okay? Human beings are predators, and then nature is our prey. And they're using the same predator-prey model. And I actually contacted the author of that paper, and I asked them, do you think that human beings will stop when nature is declining? Human beings will stop producing? Human beings will stop predating on nature if we consider ourselves as predators? No, I think we are going to get better and better technologies to go find the last remaining parts of nature to eat. That's how we behave. Okay, so our population will keep going up regardless of the prey population going down. So that model is incorrect. So you really have to use an exponential model for human beings. And when you do that, then you discover that by 2026, we are on track to wipe everything out. This is why we need to consciously change. There is no unconscious change, for human beings. Unconscious change will be the end of the world. And that's the unconscious change that will happen for human beings if we continue, behaving like predators. Because our population is already so big, we cannot afford to be predators at this population level. So we have to become a caretaker species consciously. So it has to be a conscious transformation. And so that being the case, we can throw all those models out and say, okay, look at the empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is that if you give a floor to people, if you give them security, they automatically have less children. And human population will automatically start coming down. And so it is that safety net that we need to create in the new system. The safety net of making people feel that they're taken care of, that they belong in society. Okay, fundamentally they belong on earth. They belong in the community. And when people feel that sense of belonging, that the system has told them that they belong, then they feel secure. And when they feel secure, they automatically have less children. And so then, over time, our population will come down, and we will reach a sustainable population with all the other species around. So we will return back to nature as the caretaker species, a unique designation that was never there in ecology before. Ecology always has predator species and prey species. That's it. There's no other third category. And we are saying, no, there is going to be a third category, which is human beings. And we will call ourselves Homo ahimsa, and we'll become a caretaker species. So.
All right, we got Melissa in the queue, followed by Ray. Go for it, sweetheart.
Good morning, everyone. So great to hear your voice, Sailesh, and see everybody. Speaking of getting hungry, all the little chipmunks and squirrels we've been feeding, they've just all turned up and like, where's our food, lady? And the other day, Jamin told me that he was sitting out here conversing with everyone on the platform, and one of the chipmunks came up, sat on the table, and put both his little feet on Jamin's knee because he was hungry. It's like, come on, dude, what you doing? I just wanted to back up a second to what Jamin was saying in his theatrical skit about Greta, etc. And this is just from my perception and my artist's perception and connected to spirit. What seems to happen on this planet is that we all turn up with a purpose and a destiny and roles to play. And what I'm seeing is with the murder of George Floyd, he turned up and did a job. It was really a harsh job because he had to leave the planet early, but his death created a whole movement. And in the same way, I think Greta was spiritually led. I don't believe she's just a cute little Asperger Swedish girl. I believe the spirit led her into creating a movement. And the power behind her was to do with the timing that the universe had, where a child stood up as an adult and said to the adults, it's time to stop hurting the planet. It's time to turn things around. And for some reason, we could hear that child's voice. And in the same way that now that the cities are collapsing, and I went into Seattle the other day because I have a public art project down there, and it's pretty intense going into the city. It looks like a ghost town. It's mainly homeless people, sadly, wandering around. Some of them do have masks now. I just feel so much for them. The city looks like a ghost town. It's boarded up, it's graffitied, it's been trashed. People are afraid to go out on the street. And I have friends who will be speaking actually July 3rd. They're African-American artists on the Divine Feminine. And one of the women told me she's terrified to go out on the street. She's Black. And she feels that cities are done. Like, who wants to live in a city now, right? Like, in all the things that put us in a trance and mesmerized us, right? Like restaurants, bars, cafes, movie theaters, et cetera, they're gone now. And so people are forced to look at, how have we been living? What is of value? What is true, right? We don't get the drug anymore that keeps us numbed up. And so people are looking for, well, how do we want to live now? So there's all these timings happening. And I think what you're talking about, Sailesh, and what all of us are talking about, this is just the timely unfolding of how things are now meant to be. As you said, Sailesh, Homo ahimsa, caretaker species, it's so obvious. Thank you. I just wanted to add that, just my vision of how things are unfolding, and that it is spirit led. It is the spirit working through us, I believe. Thanks, Jamie.
Absolutely. You're speaking my language, Melissa. Yeah. And we all have a role to play. We all have a role to play. We all had a role to play all along. And so this is why there is no need for us to, blame anyone or do any of that. We do need to overcome our trauma. So there has to be a lot of spiritual work done to help people overcome their past trauma. And then we need to find our place in the new butterfly, in the new order, and how are we contributing as Homo ahimsa? It's not about how are we extracting from nature, it's how are we providing to nature. It's the opposite. So it's you see all these people going out to regenerate forests. I see the kids who come to Sadhana Forest who are sitting there and planting trees every day and taking care of them. And they're serving a purpose too. They're figuring out how to create the new way of living. Right? This is the new way of living where we are bringing back the forest, we're bringing back the animals, and then we are feeding ourselves. So that's the main thing. We need to feed ourselves. And we have shelter. So we have plenty of homes. There are plenty of homes that are boarded up and no one's living there. So literally there is no need for extra shelter that we need to build. We have enough energy to run the thing for the time being while we sort everything out. But we need to reorganize human societies so that we are literally becoming a caretaker species. That's a different organization of human society. And we have done this sort of thing before, because we play games, and through games, we figure out how to coordinate our actions. And so far, we've been playing the game of Monopoly money, right? With Monopoly money. And so now we have to play a different game. Maybe it's Poly money, or instead of Monopoly, Aquarius will be the new game.
Beautiful. All righty. Ray is next, followed by Jamin. Go for it, Ray.
I wanted to speak about that idea of population related to where big families come from. And it's not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of very solid statistics that prove that the more poverty there is, the bigger families are. So it's not a matter of anybody what they believe. The statistics are so clear on it, whether the mechanics of it are unclear to anybody. It doesn't really matter. It's just so evident that, like, since 1994, the United Nations had the International Conference on Population and Development, which was renewed in 2010, which is about the time that I became aware of it because I was working it into a documentary that I was working on. And I think it was in 2010 that they had a year of the conference broke down the best solutions to fix the most things. What is the win-win-win-win-win solution? What is the one thing that we should do? And it was educate young girls. They said this fixes pretty much everything in our society, touches on everything in some way that just makes everything better. So, while people are looking at population as a crisis and how do we manage bringing people into the world, it really comes down to bringing people out of poverty. And when that's obviously already a goal, that's the goal that you leverage. You just drop everything and make that work. And then you can create a society where the human race is working properly, and it will find its own population. It'll find the right population once it improves that attitude of, that fits right into the divine feminine as well, empowering women to reset this balance that obviously if there's anything wrong with our society, it's the idea that war solves everything, that male part of, there's a very natural part of the male psyche to protect. But our idea of protecting has gone way out of control. So the masculine has been so much in control that every solution looks like guns, Every solution looks like, well, if we shoot the right people, if we drop bombs on the right people, then we'll balance everything out in our favor. We'll create security for that inner, the states that every election we see in the middle of the country that want to have this security. And it comes at a cost that really ripples throughout the entire planet. So I just wanted to emphasize this. It's not even opinion. It's like statistical fact. It's been understood for a long time by those who are willing to listen.
Exactly. Oh, Silas, you're muted. I don't know if you're trying to talk here or to Kamaya, but anyway.
I was going to just say absolutely. Thank you, Ray. Yeah. Go for it, Jim.
Yeah. And see, that's exactly the opposite of the conclusion that Guy had reached that he articulated the week before, which is you feed them more, they're going to reproduce more. Anyway, it's that's I think we've solved that here. Now we just need to get the message to the world. I'm next in the queue, followed by Melissa. So I just want to add that what's been kind of brewing for me, and I've had a hard time kind of putting it into words, but I think we're getting there, is how do we bring these two, how do we bring Greta and Kamaya together, right? For me, that's the vegan chocolate peanut butter combination that's going to be like, bam. Why? Because, see, if you talk about feeding people, there's a big part of the world, and frankly, even a part of myself that gets a little cynical and says, great, we get to feed everyone for a few months, and then we all burn to a crisp if we don't do SRM, right? And of course, the guy McPherson of last week would have said, we just need to focus on SRM and forget about this feeding people stuff. Well, that won't work because you can't do SRM in a Mad Max world. You can't grow food in a hot world, and you can't feed everyone in a Mad Max world. So sorry.
Yeah.
You can't feed everyone in a hot world, and you can't cool the planet in a Mad Max world where people don't have food. So it's like we literally need to bring both together, right? We need to create, I'm trying to think of the silicon chip analogy, but we need to bring, pure silicon with, the multi-level energy states of, atom. Anyway, bad analogy, but we've got to bring the vegan chocolate and peanut butter together. And that's Greta meets Kimaya. And that puts it in terms that any kid, the kids are going to be fascinated. Wait a second, I've gotten all used to Greta and everything. She kind of started to slip off my radar when she stopped sailing around the world. But now that Kimaya's here, okay, now you got my attention again, girls. What you got now? Well, and it could even start out, listen to this. It could even start out as almost like a mock debate. We need to cool the planet. We need to feed everyone. We need to cool the planet. We need to feed everyone, right? Next thing you know, it's great taste, less filling. Great taste, less filling. That's from a light beer ad that you're probably all familiar with. Hey, we both need to pull in the same direction. Feed everyone and cool the planet. And that's the only way. And they get to that conclusion, then it's like, wow, white girl and brown girl are now singing the same song. And it's a new story that we're hearing because it's a combination of these two things, right? Of the scientific and the heart. It's the head and the heart. That's it. Greta, in a sense, represents the head. Kimaya represents the heart. Obviously, they're both brilliant and they both have hearts. So that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying in terms of the optics for how humanity will, assimilate these two, pardon the expression, but cartoon characters, because that's how humanity needs to see things. They need to see things in simple terms. Eat, cool. Eat, cool. Eat, cool. Hey, it's cool to eat. And eating enables us to be cool. Anyway, thanks everyone. Melissa, you're up next.
Okay, thank you, Jamin.
Sure.
Can I just respond to Jamin? Just a little, because that's a great idea, Jamin. You just brought up something that, and I know the person who made Greta famous. His name is Stuart Scott. So he's the one who invited Greta to the UN climate change meeting, and he's the one who basically put her on that stage. And he's a good friend of mine. He's in Hawaii. And
I know Stuart. He and I are friends too. In fact,
yeah, okay. Okay.
Awesome.
So
well, let's get him into these meetings. I know he'll join. It's a little early for him, but we also have the 7 to 9 p.m.
Yeah, we can probably get him for the 7 to 9 p.m. And I think I can get him to do a video interview of Greta and Kimaya at the same time.
Great.
That's it.
Get them both together.
That's it. Him interviewing both of them, that's it, because it honors him and it gets him back into the game. Let's do something. Silas, if you send the first email, put a subject, hello, Stuart, Silas and Jamin here, and then I'll immediately do a reply all. You say what you have to say, I'll say, and then he'll be getting it from both sides, and he'll just be like, all right, I got it. Okay.
Okay.
No, Stuart's super cool. Awesome, Silas.
Perfect. Because I've been trying to get him to start reading the animal agriculture position paper, and he's been sort of hesitating because this is what climate change people do, because they're so stuck with their model that they don't want to see something new.
That's I've been trying to get him to read, the collective superintelligence white paper. And, seriously. And no, Stuart, that's it. You got
okay,
it.
good.
So if you kick off the email, I'll immediately do a reply all and pile on, and then he'll be like, all right, I'm getting it from both sides. I got it.
Okay, I'll do that today. I'll copy you on it.
I'm on it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, couple things, just addressing what you were saying, Jamin, which is awesome. There's a slightly different way to add to viewing that perspective. Is that whether we have the opportunity and the ability to save life on this planet, whether we don't, we still have to feed people. So how can we be compassionate in the here and now? We have to feed people. We have to plant. We have to take care of all the animals and the environment and all humans, even if it's for 1 minute or 1 day, or if it's to save life on Earth. And I think that just has to happen. And we have to say it like that. It's like, here's what we would love to be able to do, is save life on Earth. Here's what we're doing. We're feeding everybody, and we're taking care of the natural environments and all species. And then Silas, I just wanted to show you this because when you were talking about trauma, I'm working with this amazing woman. She's going to be speaking on July 17th on the Divine Feminine. Her name is Myrna Hecht. She's a poet. She's been working with refugees and immigrant youth for years and elders, and we collaborate with, I do the visual art. She does a poetry section with these refugee children. And she's been publishing these broadsides. Here's one on food and poetry. This program is really saving lives. And what is really interesting about it is that the poetry really allows people to tap into a part of themselves where healing can start to happen. And this is around food, their traditional foods and poetry. And I just, if you guys would indulge me, I just want to read a quick poem to show the generosity of spirit and the power of healing through poetry. Which is really fascinating and powerful. And this is called A New Life. And this child is from Nepal. These are all refugee kids. The international airport in California was our entry point to our new lives in our new country. We were surprised to see an Indian man who did not talk to us, who did not know us, bring us a delectable fried rice on a plastic plate that seemed to hold my life. When I ate the fried rice, I felt like I was falling in love with America, and I didn't care what the world said or what some people who do not want to leave Nepal say, that if we come to America, we will suffer. The fried rice was like an angel, like my sweet, flawless life as I was eating it. Suddenly, I wasn't in this world. My mind was in another world, a world that gave me hope that I could return to my country and help poor people. In our country, Nepal, sometimes there are bad people from the big cities who come to our refugee camp and they want to steal our hope. They want everything, land, houses, and even our young women, who they say they will protect, but instead they put them in danger's way. But now in America, I have found my hope simply with a welcoming plate of fried rice, the taste of my homeland.
Beautiful. Wow. No, and that just speaks to the power of how food gets right to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately. Stomach, heart, head.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. That's the, my therapist she taught me, a lot about head, heart circulation, because I used to get a lot into my head, and she's like, Jamin, you need that circulation. Well, now it's head, heart, stomach, right?
Yeah.
Head, heart, stomach, spirit.
Yeah, and poetry feeds the soul, so we need both. We have to feed our souls and our bodies. Otherwise, we're not balanced. And it's known energetically that if you feed your tummy, then your mind can open. Then you can be open-minded.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
Food's one of those primal things. We know how people react to George Floyd not being able to breathe. And we know exactly how long he was not able to breathe.
Yeah.
And that's something that, people are reacting to it. Even people like Rush Limbaugh are saying, oh, this is awful what's happening. When you can get through to Rush Limbaugh, it's that 8 minutes of not being able to breathe. And you can't tune that out. You can't explain that away.
And what we've experienced now is just this outpouring of hatred and anger. The anger is certainly justified, right? But just like a kid throwing a temper tantrum, at some point the tantrum has to end. Take a deep breath, dry off the tears, and then let's talk. And Kamaya entering the scene now, again, with her beautiful brown skin and her multi-ethnic, multiracial background. She is the Greta for the George Floyd tragedy. She is the Greta to bring us back together and say, all right, look, I feel the pain too. I asked my grandpa, shoot, are they going to kill me because I'm part black? Right? She can tell them that actually happened. That was not made up by Stuart Scott or one of his editors, right? Yeah. This actually happened. And that'll get everyone crying. Goodness, I'm crying right now. Right? The fact that a little girl has to ask, Grandpa, am I going to get murdered on the streets of Phoenix.
Yeah.
You know, holy shit. And so then her coming together with Greta and saying, you know, enough is enough, and just grappling with this, with the vulnerability, the raw, feminine, young vulnerability that they bring to it. That's it. That will end.
Well, and wisdom, because they come with this wisdom in them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, to build off the Nigerian example, I think that will end finally the diasporan war. That will be the beginning of the end of this people against people war, white versus black, rich versus poor, et cetera, et cetera. That'll be the beginning of the end, because the solution, now that Kamaya has the world's attention, everyone's going to go for K-Mama. It's just so, it's obviously the answer out of it, right? How do you get two conflicting parties to start to converse? You throw a meal, you have a meal. We all sit down and eat. We don't have to talk, we just eat. We'll be talking with our hearts. We'll be talking with our imaginations. We'll be talking by just visualizing it, right? Again, Buckminster Fuller, don't try to change people's minds. Give them a tool. K-Mama is the tool. It's that simple. And when I say K-Mama is the tool, what I really mean is a double entendre. K-Mama is the tool, and K-Mama is the tool.
Well, it's also interesting that with COVID, we're being asked to stay separate. You know, and before we could have sat at a table together and cracked bread, and we can't do that any longer. So I think that's kind of interesting to think about. You know, what does that mean? Like, I was thinking of this story of this couple who lived in a tiny house. I think it's from India, this story, probably, because, you know, most of those wise stories come from India that have a good lesson to learn from them. And they go to their guru and they complain about how tiny their house is. And he says, oh, I can help you figure that one out really easily. And every day he has that family add something into their household. So first the sheep go in, and then the goats, and then the cows, and then the mother-in-law, and then the cousins. And he keeps filling the house for them until it's so crowded. The couple goes back to their guru and say, well, but it's even more crowded than before. And he says, oh, well, that's easy. Let's just start taking everybody out. And every day somebody leaves until finally the last goat and the last cow go. And they go, oh, our house is so big now. You know, and so I think it's interesting that we're having everything removed from us, right? Our freedom in a way to move about. We can't travel. We can't go to the movie theater. We can't meet friends. We can't have dinner parties. So things have been removed. Why have they been removed? And what is the end result of that? What, in terms of what we're reflecting on? And so the slate's been being wiped clean for us to prepare a new kind of table. I think that's really fascinating, you know, and so we're going to feed people, and then what does that look like now? You know, we're not going to be sitting around that table eating meals for a while together. You know, it's going to be in people's homes, delivered in brown paper bags or something.
But the eating together could be via Zoom, right? Which is the collective intelligence third leg of the triangle. You got the food, you got the SRM, you got the CSI, right? And Greta and Kamaya will be modeling that collective intelligence just by talking with each other. Again, very unscripted, vulnerable. How do we do this? And that's just going to get people pouring in, because they're going to say, how do we do this? How do we do this? Right? As an aspiring knight, if I hear two young ladies saying, help, 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 I'm on my horse. Sorry. Forget the horse. I'm running. I'm in my vegan running shoes. Sorry. Thank you, Ray. I just see I see the look in Ray's eyes, and I'm just like, whoa. See, look, this is transformation in action. I don't actually ride horses, but this is transformation in action. You see how I caught myself? The world is going to get onto this. I really think you hit the nail on the head, Silas. I think we got this. We've been at this for a bunch of weeks now. Yeah. First, we're going to Brooklyn. We're going to do a press conference. Then we're going here. Then we're going to Toronto, and we're going to invade Canada. You know. And anyway, I think we got it now. I think we got this. Seriously, because look, this is the divine feminine, and this is also the races coming together, the nations coming together. With Greta and Kamaya, you've got a planetary United Nations right there. Boof. Right.
So is the idea to have them come together in conversation?
Silas proposed. Here's the thing. Stuart Scott, I actually didn't even know this fact, but Stuart Scott, who's a friend of ours as well, he is the one who invited Greta to the
Yeah, I
United.
heard
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Anyway, so Silas said, listen, let's get Stuart Scott back on board and have him interview both Greta
Oh
and
yeah, that's a
Kamaya
great
at the
idea.
same time.
That's a
Right.
great idea.
But the way I see it is let's let Kamaya and Greta be at the front, and the rest of us can just be standing there saluting and just at the ready. You know, if Greta's like, hey, what is the current concentration of methane in the atmosphere? Stuart, bloop, or Silas, bloop, here it is, boom. And what's causing all that? Silas, well, it's all the animals, animal agriculture. Okay, got it. Okay, great. And but they lead, we support. It's time for,
Interesting.
us older men to take a back seat to the divine feminine and the youth. And between the two of them, they've got it all. They've got it all. There's not a single checkbox that's unchecked.
You know what could be really interesting is to have children and elders. And I'm just thinking of Jane Goodall. It could be really great to have her and another elder, maybe, I'm sorry, from India, her name's escaping me, the environment.
Vandana Shiva.
Yeah, I don't know if, it could be interesting to have her and then the children, these two opposites, because the wisdom carry the experience of and knowledge of a lifetime, and they're doing good work. And then these young children who are bringing this new impulse into the world. I think that could be really interesting to have those two perspectives, but all working towards the same goal.
You could call it a conversation of generations.
Yeah, nice, James.
Yeah, we'll make.
But all led by the feminine. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm happy to make the proposal to Stuart and see where he takes it, because he had this whole scientist warning, I think that's what he calls it, scientist warning channel, through which he does all his UN activism.
Yeah, great.
All right, we've got some stuff in the chat window here. Ray writes, can Greta be the next subject of $1 Million Vegan? I'll let Ray comment on that. And then James posted a video. Maybe you can share with us about that, James, if you want us to play it now. But go ahead, Ray.
Is Stuart Scott vegan?
Not yet. But he told me that these days, after all the chemotherapy he's going through, he's not able to eat animal foods. So he said, I can't even eat my eggs. I love my eggs. I eat my eggs and I throw up. I said, your body is telling you something.
Yeah.
Saying, don't eat it.
He has cancer or some kind?
I gotta eat something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of food.
Yeah.
He has cancer of some kind?
Yeah, he has leukemia.
The police department and
So Greta herself is vegan, so it doesn't make it logical that she'd be the next choice of the $1 Million Vegan campaign, which first challenged the Pope to go vegan for Lent, and then challenged Donald Trump to go vegan, and have $1 million donated to the veterans. I never even heard the result of that. I guess it was not great news that he turned it down. That was kind of an obvious conclusion. But challenging Greta to expose veganism, expose the impacts of animal agriculture in a way that brings it into the spotlight, makes it a real solution that nobody is really treating it like a real solution.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is calculating the impacts of anything over the next decade. Everything is safe according to the environmental movement that has so much invested in fossil fuels, safely calculated on a 100-year time frame, so that fossil fuels is far and away the worst impact, which isn't honest, which isn't.
I can hear you from
valid
over
science.
there, even though he's wearing earplugs.
Am I too loud?
little too loud.
Nah,
Maya, you're our mom now. Will you adopt us all? Will you be our K-Mama?
will you be our K Mama?
That's the whole point of the name.
Okay, good. Yes.
What part of K-Mama don't you understand? She said that's the point of the name, and feeding everyone is the plan. What part of K-Mama don't you understand?
Love it.
I am a K-Mama fan. Join us.
No, but Ray, that's a great idea, actually. I can suggest it to the $1 Million Vegan Campaign, that they can focus on Greta and make her talk about veganism.
Well, who can she challenge to go vegan? Maybe we get Greta to be the challenger. So rather than challenging Greta, get her to challenge, because she's vegan, she's youth. She can challenge. That's why I was asking about Stuart Scott. But maybe there's somebody more poignant. Like I would love Michael Mann to be challenged to go vegan. Oh, James Hansen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of the challenge, the natural challenge is simply get Kimaya and Greta together, let them talk, and they'll sort it out because they're both vegan, right? Greta's not even Greta doesn't quite know how to talk about it publicly yet. Kimaya will point the way. She'll show the way. Here's how we talk about it. Here's what we do. And what's Greta going to say? Oh, no, I'm suddenly going to go back to eating meat. No, give me a break. She's already vegan, right? So, but anyway, that's my point.
I don't think she's had the platform to talk about it. I think that whenever she talks, it's a very concentrated message, and those who have given her a platform have made that verboten to talk about, I think.
Well, K-Mama is the platform. Alrighty. James has his hand up, and Srikar is saying she's got to head to work. Any last words before you take out? I'm sorry. Srikar's wife. I forgot your name. I'm sorry. Sasha. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the. This is better than a cup of coffee in the morning. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful day, guys, and hey to Kamaya as well. I will keep my voice down. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you, Sasha. James is next in the queue, but just look at Sasha's reaction. This is better than morning coffee. And Sasha's committed to her morning coffee. I'm telling you, everyone's going to love this. We're almost there, you guys and gals. All right. James, take it away.
Yeah, I just give my 2 cents worth there now about I think the conversational idea between Greta and Kamaya is a great idea in the sense that they're sitting down and talking to so-called elders, you know what I mean, of grandparent age, so to speak. But they're basically, it's done in a sense like the true Greta would come through she would bring the veganism side through it, but what they're basically doing is ask and be told what the problems are, and they can ask then, but why don't we do this? And why are we all eating meat? But why don't we do that then? And, so it's coming from the child's perspective, talking to the elders, rather than the confrontational thing, talking to somebody who would be negative towards them, and that would only end up frustrating the kids, and it would spoil it out that way. It's better if we have someone who's more congenial and responding respectfully with the answers that they're asking. Out of the mouth of babes, they ask the right questions, you give them the right answers. So I think that would be the best approach.
Yeah,
I
think the more we discuss this, the idea is getting better and better. The idea of having Greta and Kimaya and possibly Jane Goodall, and so creating like 2 generations like that, and talking to the kids, and then the kids talking to the elders, and elders saying, yeah, I think you're right, we need to be doing this. Especially if we can get all the elders to be vegan. right? So that there is no conflict about that. You know? Then I think we can have an honest conversation.
Sailash, I'm pretty sure Jane Goodall is vegetarian, but she's not vegan, is she?
She's vegan, yeah.
She actually is vegan?
She's
Because I
vegan.
read that she eats primarily vegan, but if she goes somewhere and there's no vegan, she'll eat vegetarian. So I wasn't sure if she like identified as vegan or not.
From what I know, I mean, I've been corresponding with her team, because we were trying to get her to be on our one of our Climate Healers Health Conference, one of the conferences, and so she identifies herself as vegan. At least in that, she was identifying herself as vegan. It may be an evolution that she's going through.
Oh my goodness. Well, it looks like no one's in the queue at the moment, so I'll just jump in and say what this is finally doing. It is putting a beautiful human face on top of all those numbers and triple integrals and summation math in all these white papers that just put us to sleep. Let's face it. You know, come on. And you know, it really, and what it does is it breaks it down and it shows just and puts it in such simple terms. And with the focus on food and the focus on cooling, right, the third pillar becomes sort of invisible, right? And that's perhaps the best way of all to introduce the third pillar. What's that invisible third pillar? Collective intelligence, bringing people together, right? Sweden, United States, old, young, male, female, just bring us together. And it just becomes, well, obviously that's the way to do it. But you see how it just creeps in subtly? Because I think with food and cooling, those are the two tangible things we can talk about. Nobody really wants to talk about collective intelligence. That's only that's my second least favorite thing to do after reading white papers, right? Is to talk about, I'm being cynical here. But, you know, but the point is very real. We need to bring it down to the level of youth, beauty, purity, and brass tacks, food, cooling. I mean, it's just like, that's it. It's so simple. The girls will make it simple for us. They'll simplify it for us, right? I mean, like literally going back a few months ago, you know, when we were having this conversation, you know, how are we going to feed everyone? This was like several months ago, even before Food Healers. And you know, Kamaya pops in, like, what are you guys talking about? Oh, we're talking about food and this and that. How do we feed everyone? She's like, well, it's simple. Just grow food in your backyard. And it's like, suddenly that has become the end point of all this food evolution. See, right now we're importing rice from Asia, we're importing beans from Mexico, and we're serving beans and rice to people. Fast forward a couple of years, everyone's going to be growing their own food because the community is going to be supporting people in doing that. Right now, we're bringing them food. In a few months, we'll be bringing them saplings, you know, plant starts, soil, and knowledge, and volunteer groups like we've talked about, you know, going and installing permaculture in people's homes just as a public service, right? So again, Kamaya broke it down for me in a way that I don't think any adult ever could have. Just like, grow food in your backyard. And I was just like, it just stopped me in my tracks. Do you remember that moment, Silas? Do you remember?
I do.
Yeah. So she's already hitting it outside the park, right? Now we're promoting her to she's promoting herself to the big leagues is what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, when you grow food in your backyard and you go and donate it to your temple or your church, you think they're going to say no to that? They're going to use that, you know. I mean, so it's. I think this is all going to come together where it becomes like, yeah, I'm doing a service to the community by growing food. So I see this all coming together, as you said, you know, and very quickly too.
And I'm gonna challenge Ray just a little bit, because look, fundamentally we're all in agreement here. But where I want to challenge a little bit is on kind of the emphasis on veganism, and really we're not in disagreement, because Kamaya is going to bring that front and center in a way that'll just finally make sense to people, just like it finally made sense to me that we got to grow our own food locally rather than have giant ships shipping rice across the oceans. Not there's anything fundamentally wrong with that at the moment anyway. But the point I want to make is we put the emphasis on feeding everyone and cooling the planet. And even my beloved collective superintelligence takes a back seat, kind of fades into the background where it'll be very powerful. In a similar way, once people are sold, okay, great, yeah, we got to feed everyone. You know, every cheeseburger eating Republican will eventually agree that we got to feed everyone. And then now that you've got them into the tent through that easy on-ramp, of course we got to feed everyone. Now it's just a matter of what do we eat? That's secondary. That we eat.
It doesn't make for a unique tent, though. There's people feeding the poor all over the place. And
Yeah, I mean, Ray's right. You know, there's a food bank that they said, you can go collect food from the food bank and give it to people. And that food bank is putting like frozen meats as the base of their food. And I said, I don't want to give people food that's going to make them sicker than they already are. Why would we do that? I mean, voluntarily, I would give them food that's going to make them better. So
yeah,
this is why.
Just to be clear, I'm not advocating that we back off from veganism at all. All I'm saying is that in the optics, in the messaging, what's the headline? Feed everyone and cool the planet.
Right.
Food, cool. Food, cool. Food, cool. Right. Now dig in, go into the tent, and it's all plant-based. Right. Anyway, that's all I'm saying. It's really a subtle point. We're in total agreement.
there isn't any vegan activist that isn't, feeling out the culture to see where we fit in the politics of things. How much of a political loser is veganism? And when I became vegan in 2015, it was, I'd say definitely keep it out of the spotlight and make it more about plant-based food and try to get people's attention, because as soon as you say stop eating meat, they go, well, is it healthy? And then you have this health conversation. So 2016, I'd say the same thing. 2017, 2018, I'd start to wonder about it. 2019, I just passed a line where I said, yeah, now it's full. Take the blocks out and go full speed ahead with promoting the vegan message, because the political pressure, the political pushback is now very relevant. That we have to push back on the pushback to really get the progress, because we're running out of time now. And that applies to certain situations and not to every situation. You kind of have to use your nuance and understand that there's certain places where it doesn't fit. Like I had to promote trying to get plant-based food into the Toronto District School Board. Are they going to go full-on vegan in every cafeteria in the Toronto school system? They wouldn't even understand it. Like the chances of them buying into it right away. So I was involved in a Meatless Mondays campaign as a, kind of hold your nose and go, okay, well, I don't really believe in Meatless Monday because it's, if you decide it's wrong, why are you doing it one day a week? So, but you just kind of choose your battles, and those battles should get stronger. And we have to understand that if we really only got 6 years to correct the ship, pushing veganism because it's got political resistance is more incentive to do so in certain situations, because it has so much more meaning. Like I mentioned with the educate young girls, veganism solves a lot of things, and it's not just a health thing. It is a combining of two massive movements that pretend that they don't exist. I've been, the last 5 years, I've been right at that nexus of the environmental movement that thinks that veganism is a totally different thing. That it's, we don't want to let the vegan agenda hijack our message. That is, I've been encountered with that nonstop, everywhere I go. And that's kind of been my space, is to be the activist who's, agitating in that space. I mean, all I had to do was show up for Toronto Drawdown meetings with a vegan shirt, and half the people go, "Hey, man, you're vegan," and discover a whole bunch of vegans in the group, and other people who, have to adjust their message because they know there's a vegan in the audience. And I've seen it, evidence of it on camera, that people have changed what they said because and I just happen to be videotaping as well, because I volunteered to videotape for them. So they, not only are they being observed by a vegan, they're being video recorded by a vegan. And they talk about it more than I do.
Yeah. So this is why I think, framing it, like in the position paper, we are framing it as, when you eat the right foods, when you are feeding the right foods to people, vegan foods, you're automatically also cooling the planet. Okay. But then we can ask the question, are we cooling enough? And do we need to cool more? So that becomes a very scientific question at that point, right? If we need to cool more, yeah, let's put some mirrors out there, right? So it becomes like that, so that it becomes that inquiry. But we will say automatically you're cooling the planet, because you have to go and, we have plenty of land available at that point to regenerate forests and all that. So let's go regenerate forests, and then we can count, okay, how much are we cooling? Is that enough? Are we still going to have the Arctic melting on our, and causing everything to heat up in the Arctic, right? So that becomes a very scientific question, and I think SRM will come into play, okay, automatically when we do that. But it's about being honest and open about what we are doing, about overcoming all of fragility. So I say, this is why I wrote this thing called non-vegan fragility and dietary racism, and how by not wanting to talk about that, they're actually causing a lot of racism and speciesism and colonialism and ableism and sexism to be there 3 times a day in what you're eating. You're basically promoting it, right? So it becomes like a way of promoting all these systemic problems that we know are systemic. It's there in the air we breathe, in the food we eat. So it's just pointing that out and saying, okay, we have to overcome that fragility. We have to talk about it. It's only when we talk about it openly and honestly and admit that we were all playing roles in this game, this monopoly game that we were playing, that was driving the colonialist experiment, or the capitalist experiment. And now that we are done with the caterpillar phase and we know we have to evolve and become butterflies, let's figure out what roles we're going to play as butterflies. And what is the basis of that butterfly? And so that's where the K-Mama app comes in. As that's the basis. We have to start with that, feeding everyone, taking care of each other. Unless we heal ourselves, we are never going to be effective at healing the planet. Because if you're sick, you don't care that the planet is dying. You're sick, you're caring that you're dying, right? So when people have diabetes, heart disease, these things have to be addressed first. So this is why we have to give them good food. Make sure that we're giving them good food. This is why I don't want to be party to distributing bad food to people. And so I have to respectfully decline the boxes that these food banks are creating, and create our own food boxes for people. Anyway, that's my soapbox. Thank you.
Love your soapbox, Silas. All righty. We got Kelly in the queue, followed by Jamin. And I first want to welcome Myra and also point out that in 9 minutes, it'll be the top of the hour and the beginning of the Divine Feminine, where we have special guest Deborah Grognard. So everyone's, of course, welcome to stay for that. Kelly, please take it away.
I was actually just going to say what you said, Silas. Like, you pretty much covered everything I was going to say. Like, I keep going back to the interview between Jane Velez Mitchell and Milton Mills, where he's saying, like, they want to keep us sick. Like, they want to keep Black people sick, right? And so I think we have to make you know, if vegan, you know, I hate this whole like vegan versus plant-based. If the words have to be plant-based, whatever, right? You know, but like you said, talk about healthy food, right? I think it needs to be pointed out that it is plant-based / vegan food. And so people can make that connection, because like, I can't imagine that, you know, if I was in that position, like having that like light bulb turn on. I mean, that light bulb turned on for me, but like for someone who's more dependent on that food, right? I've never been in a position where I've needed to be dependent, right? You know, so to be like, I would be so angry, right? Like, wow, yeah, you know, I get it. Like, this is so unfair, right? You know, so, like, yeah, so just talking about like the messaging, like, I think it really, you know, vegan, saying that it's vegan is really important, because I think, especially now with more and more people being woke so quickly, I think it's more palpable. I think people will be more open to it. And because, you know, yeah, you know, the momentum's there, I think, yeah, I think now's the perfect time.
So, Les, you were talking about the exposing this honesty about climate change, and one of the things that I perceive about how climate change is unfolding over the next 10 years and 100 years, and then there's a lot of, you know, push and pull between the different causes of climate change and the scope in which you define climate change. And because so much of what the IPC and the world, our governments, and they're looking at these long-term solutions, which validates this idea of using a 100 years global warming period to do all their calculations. And they're comfortable with that, because if you create carbon dioxide now, it's going to be around for 100 years, and then it actually longer than 100 years, because it doesn't entirely dissipate. So you're constantly adding to it. So, but this actually implies that nothing that you do to carbon dioxide at this point is going to have an effect on the next 10 years. That it's going to be there for 100 years. The half-life is around 50 years. So the only solutions that will have an effect on this next 10-year period that is going to determine whether we pass tipping points. Those emissions 100 years from now are really absolutely irrelevant. If our society collapses while on our watch, while we do nothing about animal agriculture, we do nothing about methane, we do nothing about focusing on this next 10 years. So I say solutions. One of them is stop animal agriculture, and the other one is find some sort of a solution to reduce the heat. So solar radiation management is a now solution. It's incredibly controversial to say to the environmental community, your solution has no relevance for the next 10 years. You still have to stop. I mean, you could have 100% support from governments and so forth, and all the resistance disappear instantly. You still have a period of at least 10, 20, 30 years before you can switch your energy grid over to a new renewable system, doing a lot of manufacturing and increasing emissions in the meantime. So how do you get people to really focus on that? Because there's so much incentive for them not to. And we see whenever it gets criticized, they say, oh, you're using all the fossil fuel, the big oils, talking points, and so forth. Well, sometimes, you know, the truth is there for big oil to use. So it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's something that's politically untenable for you know, trying to get a very divided nation that's on this side or that side. Are you left or right? And if you're right, you don't believe in climate change. You know, or you don't believe that stopping fossil fuels is the answer. So it's, how much of this truth do we want to try to evoke? And I was thinking about that in the context of the $1 Million Vegan Campaign. How can we leverage your white paper, your position paper, into the spotlight? And with people like Stuart Scott and Jane Goodall and Greta.
Yeah.
And Kamaya.
This is something that Nivi is working on. Nivi is trying to figure out how because basically what we are doing at Climate Healers is that we are repositioning climate change from what she calls the 9 o'clock section to the 3 o'clock section. We are moving it from fossil fuels to food as the primary reason for climate change, and the primary solution to climate change comes from food first and then fossil fuels. It's not that you can continue burning fossil fuels. In fact, we are not saying that CO2 is a long-term gas. We are actually saying CO2 is a very short-term gas. We are saying that we can suck it down with forests starting today if you want to, right? So on its head. We are saying that CO2 actually is part of the larger cycle that's been going on every year. You know, there's 200 gigatons of carbon being put into the atmosphere and 200 gigatons being sucked down every year through photosynthesis and respiration. That is a very short-term cycle. And so we are saying, when we say CO2 is a long-term cycle, you're saying, I'm not going to touch that cycle. I'm only going to pretend that that cycle is always balanced naturally, and we won't do anything to address it by bringing back forests. We will just let other CO2 sequestration mechanisms take over. That's when they say it's a 100-year cycle. Okay? That's when they say it's a long-term gas. We are turning it around on its head. We are saying, no, it's a very short-term gas. We can actually suck it down every year by bringing back the forests. And when we do that, you know, we can afford to figure out what fossil fuels do we really still need to burn. Because ultimately, you know, if you look at what we are doing on Earth, 99% of our activities are unnecessary and wasteful. So why are we switching the energy infrastructure over to use clean energy to do unnecessary and wasteful things? You know, forget it. I'm not interested in that. Okay. Why is someone still working on 5G? Someone working on, you know, making the next iPhone? Who cares? That's not important right now. Okay. That's not important right now. What's important right now is how do we feed people? How do we bring back the forest? How do we bring back life? How do we create? How do we let life regenerate, right? And clean up the mess we have made. So that's where our focus should be. So anyway, so I think we are turning around, basically we're turning the conversation of climate change around from where it was, which was about the current economic growth paradigm, right? And turning it around to something that's it's more life affirming. It's and so this is why I'm glad that Nivi joined us, and I think she's the right person to figure out how to make that repositioning of climate change. So thank you all very, very much.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Silas. We are at the top of the hour, so time for the Divine Feminine. I just wanted to squeeze in one more comment. First, I want to welcome Deborah and Jackie. So great to see you both. Welcome, everyone. Super excited that you're our guest speaker today, Deborah. So we'll kick that off in a moment. What I wanted to add, Ray, I think you hit the nail on the head, and we'll in saying there are these two movements that keep trying to pretend the other one doesn't exist. Right? And that's the competition thing. And what makes me so excited about Kamaya and Greta getting together and just having an actual conversation is, you know, those two wonderful young ladies are going to reach consensus and agreement, right? Bring two people together at the Oxford Debate Society. They're going to meet as enemies. They're going to fight for an hour, and they're going to leave as enemies. And it's like, who won? Who won? It might as well be Chelsea versus Manchester and a bunch of bloody shins, right? And somebody defeated the other. When Kamaya and Greta get together, it's a whole different ballgame. It's unity, it's consensus, it's working together. And
Just don't even say that.
and again, it doesn't even have to be something that we say, we just show. Don't try to change people's minds into unity, unity, unity. Give them a tool. The tool is Kamaya meets Greta. That's it. That's the tool. Everyone will be fascinated, and poof, it'll penetrate. All right, that's all I wanted to say. And now we're a minute after the hour, so it's time to shift gears to the Divine Feminine. Let me call out Melissa and see if you want to move inside. Okay, we're going to move the party inside. Do we need a couple of minutes the bathroom break or something. We've been kind of going hard for the last 3 hours without a break. Do we need a little break? How long? Just a couple minutes, 5 minutes? What do people want?
All right, just careful of the chipmunk bites.
5? Okay. So let's meet back at 7 after the hour. Quick break, because I don't want to cut too much into the Divine Feminine. So in 5 minutes, we'll be back and we'll start a new recording. Thanks, everybody.